Welcome to Workforce Observer, the podcast where we go beyond the headlines to uncover the real forces reshaping work, talent, technology, and the business of staffing. Today's guest is Peter Sanborn, Head of Strategy, Corporate Development and Partnerships at Upwork. Peter is not only a prominent business leader, but also a seasoned venture investor and board member with deep global experience across technology and financial services. He brings a unique lens on how innovation, strategy, and partnerships can redefine the future of work. Insights I'm excited to dive into today. Hi, Peter. Really excited to have you.
Hi, how are you? Great to be here.
Thanks. So, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your role at Upwork?
Sure. So I started my career, took a little bit of the road less traveled, studied in the US, but my first job was actually in Mexico City, working for a global international bank, and kind of decided rather than going the New York, Chicago, big city route in the US, to take a little bit of a leap of faith and move to a different market. And the real reason behind that, I was always fascinated by these global macro shifts, what was happening more broadly in the world, and how that impacted businesses outside of just the backyard in the US. And so I spent a few years in Mexico City. I then moved to Hong Kong. I was there for about 7 years, all playing in the kind of finance, strategy, M&A realm, seeing a bunch of different businesses across the financial services spectrum. After that, made the move to Silicon Valley and jumped into PayPal right before the spinoff from eBay. So it was a unique time seeing a company that was public previously spin out, become an independent entity, and really got to see some fascinating kind of shifts in how
Wow.
payments and mobile financial technology was developing, and some actual corollaries that we can talk about in terms of what we're seeing in the future of workspace. As you mentioned, did a stint in the venture space at PayPal. I was running our venture arm. Decided to go do that for a few years, and really that was driven by just the desire to see where innovation was arising. Where was it coming from? How was it kind of bubbling up, outside of the corporate sphere, and see if I could kind of tack into that. Did that for a few years, but ultimately realized kind of my passion of kind of rolling up my sleeves and being in an operating role was too much to hold back. And so
Sure.
joined Upwork. I've been here for about a year. As you mentioned, run our strategy, our corporate development, and our partnerships teams here. So yeah, excited to be here and chat a bit further with you.
Yep, that's a lot of global stuff. So, and I know you've been in the center of big shifts, right? In fintech, now the future of work. From your point, in strategy, corporate development, and partnership, what's the most important thing shaping the way companies access and manage today? And really, why does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think, have watched several of your other podcasts, and obviously a recurring theme. I think there's no question that work is being transformed by
Yeah,
AI today, and in so many different ways.
right.
And one of the reasons I joined Upwork is I think it sits at the center of the future of work. And, the platform visibility we have, the real-time data that we see, really gives you insights into the types of roles that companies are hiring for, the types of skill sets that are evolving, and frankly, just how work gets done. And if I think back, we recently had our second quarter earnings, and I think there were, a lot of interesting nuggets within that kind of underpin this kind of shift towards AI, as you mentioned.
Right.
We're seeing, clients posting jobs up 38% year over year related to AI. Clients that are working with AI related tasks, they're spending about 3 times more than average clients on our platform.
Right.
They're looking for access to the 250,000 AI experts we have on the platform. Probably one of the more fascinating things actually is, we're seeing some categories where you would have expected disruption or displacement by AI. They're actually being augmented and accelerated. So things like accounting and bookkeeping, video and animation, contract law. These are areas where we're seeing work demand rise, in part because companies still want to see that human creativity and judgment on top of AI. And so it's really an augmentation element. And
Mm-hmm.
so net, like, this shift is happening, but I don't think it's a zero-sum game between, humans and AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's actually complementary. I think it's kind of unlocking and empowering humans in a different way than we've ever seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, because everything, AI is a tool, right? So this whole thing about, oh my God, is staffing over is really not true, right? Then just based on a little that you are saying. Can you talk a little bit about it? Because there are people out there, and maybe it's just the fear cycle, but AI, we need people staffing. Just link it for me.
Yeah, I actually think it's gonna continue to evolve. In one of our theses is that the contingent workforce of the staffing piece is going to grow even further over time. If you think about AI and that kind of empowerment or augmentation that I just mentioned, ultimately to enable that, you need to have fast, flexible, on-demand workforces.
Right.
I think some of the data we've seen is that freelancers are 2x more likely to work with, experiment, and frankly leverage AI tools than full-time employees. And so, given that, and the rise of AI, not just from like an automation, but from an outcome-driven perspective, I
Right.
think staffing is going to play a central role. And frankly, that's one of the reasons, we've doubled down on that strategy. We were
Right.
hearing that from our customers. You may have seen we had a few announcements in the last couple of weeks here. Happy to chat about
One.
those, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, certainly a big part of the thesis.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about how is Upwork carving out its role in this space, in the continued workforce space, and how does Lifted and its recent acquisitions play into that vision? Because I think it's pretty big.
Yeah, it's an important one I'm personally very excited about. I've spent a ton of time on it since I joined a year ago. And if you think about, Upwork and what we've been known for is really that independent contractor solution. That's where enterprises have previously worked with us, thought about us. But what we were hearing from them is actually they loved the access to the global on-demand talent pool, the AI skill set and experts, the domain experts and specialists across 10,000 skills. But they wanted us to participate and work within their contingent workforce kind of platform and systems, right? They
Right.
had spend budgets that previously, we weren't really tapping into and we weren't really working within that. And
Okay.
so,
Sorry, not to
yeah.
interrupt, but what is they? Who are these companies? Do you have like a?
Yeah, these are large Fortune,
Okay.
Fortune 5,000, 500 companies, large organizations with
Okay.
large, big budgets.
Okay.
We've serving them. You can see some of the logos on the website.
Right.
But ultimately, they wanted more, right? They wanted more for us. And so this is one of those unique situations where you're getting a customer pull, a demand opportunity. And we set out to re-architect that and rethink how we could come up with an offering that ultimately allowed us to take some of the benefits of Upwork that we have historically and marry that with some new skills and some new capabilities. And so the announcements that we had really two deals. We announced an acquisition of a digitally native workforce management platform that really allows companies to manage end to end the full spectrum of contingent workforce contracts from ICs all the way through to outsourcing and managed services. And then
Right.
we also acquired a next gen EOR purpose built for the staffing industry. And so when we combine these three, really the goal was to be able to offer kind of a unique proposition where these large organizations can source, they can onboard, they can manage, and they can pay all across the contingent spectrum. Independent contractors, AOR, agent of record models, employer of record models, staff
Right.
augmentation, and in this outsourcing. And so the value prop being, let's provide something with speed, with flexibility, with access to this on-demand talent that's compliant, it's global, and then importantly, it works within the existing contingent workforce ecosystem. So we're not trying to disrupt or replace, we're actually trying to augment, enhance, and partner with other constituents like MSPs and VMSs in the ecosystem.
Wow. Well, I've been with this industry for about 2 decades now, and when I first started, I was working with Odesk,
Yeah.
and then Elance, and then the merge, and now this. So, I mean, like really briefly, two things. How is Lifted positioning itself? Because there's so many players in the space. It's a whole, it's a different space in some senses.
Yeah.
And how is Lifted positioning itself, and what do you think of the competition?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of the legacy players, obviously, they serve a key purpose. You asked, a couple of minutes ago, like, where do I see staffing heading? I do think it will continue to grow and evolve, but I think in order to do that and kind of meet the demand aspirations that we're
Right.
seeing for, provide a flexible, remote workforce solution that can tackle what I'm looking to do on demand, fast and flexible. You need to have a unified tech stack. You need to have a unified offering, more tech based than services based, more centralized in terms of, having a unification across geographies, across
Hmm.
different contract types. And while the legacy players out there exist, they're not necessarily doing that in a unified way. They're decentralized, tend to be a bit legacy, older tech stacks. And maybe their core contract types also don't have that same sourcing and independent contractor and frankly large global talent base that Upwork has. So really by marrying all of those, we felt we have a unique value prop. And this is a big step forward for Upwork. I think it's a fully purpose-built enterprise-grade technology and platform. It's not like retrofitted from SMBs. It's not like hiving off of our marketplace tech, stack and what we have with Upwork. It's really fully different, fully kind of enabled for this customer, and hence that was a big part of why we rebranded it. Also, it's still an Upwork company, but wanted to have a clear delineation that this platform, this offering is for you, large enterprise, large global customer.
Yeah, it's a kind of cool name, Lifted, you know?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
So let's talk a little bit about, Upwork and the world of work, because Upwork often talks about this, right?
Yeah.
Shaping the world of work. So from your global experience, what does the future look like, and how is Upwork driving it? Is there anything specific, like any initiatives that you and trends that you see and that you're excited about?
Yeah. So maybe I'll kind of start a little bit higher, zoom in with the trends, and then we can zoom in a little bit. We've talked about AI. I don't think the future is just about AI. I actually think it's about how humans and AI are working together.
Mhm.
That's a big portion of how we look at the world. And from our vantage point, seeing companies of all sizes, not just enterprises with Lifted, but from very small businesses, solopreneurs, SMBs, mid-market, all the way up to enterprises. And on the talent and professional kind of independent contractor side, we're really starting to see kind of the new contours of how work is being redefined. And I think that kind of happens, I would say, across, three different kind of shifts or areas. The first being, companies are starting to design for humans and AI. So it's not just about AI replacing people, it's about how you're augmenting and, the trust, the collaboration, the creativity that humans built that can't be replaced. But you still have this augmented capability and the ability to unlock and enhance with AI. And so when
Right.
you're designing together, that amplifies potential. And so I think that's kind of one underpinning of how we look at the world and what we're trying to offer to our customers. I think the second piece, and we've talked about it, and this even better than me, but companies are really building flexible workforces to take
Yeah.
advantage of this ecosystem and of these trends that are happening. And so I think the most resilient, the highest performing companies, they do need that agility, they need that flexibility, they need to be able to scale up and down to meet demand. And that's really one of the reasons why we did acquire these companies on the enterprise side and launch Lifted.
Right.
And I think the third piece for me is really redefining AI strategies.
Right.
It's not just about automation, and I think that's one kind of area where people naturally gravitate towards. They think AI automation. Actually, I think where it's headed is it about outcomes, and no longer just about tools, but how can you redeploy these capabilities to achieve outcomes. And you know, zooming in a little bit more from an Upwork perspective and the initiatives we have, on our platform, we have Upwork Uma, our Uma, Mindful AI and Work Companion. And, this is really modeling out what I think the future of work looks like, which is embedding AI in a way that helps deliver an outcome rather than just doing the work for you. It's enhancing you.
Is there anything that you are particularly excited about?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things. I mean, even just to go specifically on that UMA point, I think that's evolving from like like a smart assistant to a strategic thought partner for businesses and freelancers alike. I think on the business side, you can write better, job posts. You can start to utilize UMA in order to generate ideas. It can help you compare proposals coming from freelancers, and it can really even like brainstorm and help you think about next steps. On the freelancer side, it's how do I tailor my proposals? How do I brainstorm solutions? How do I think about ways that I can better serve these clients? And at the end of the day, that's not just saying, hey, we're going to do the work for you with UMA. It's actually how can we unlock you to do your best work with high quality and speed and creativity. And so that excites me in terms of what we're doing on our platform. The other piece is, from my role, we look at build by partner. We're looking at kind of the spectrum of opportunities. And from the build side, yes, on the UMA piece, we developed our own internal models, and that's a core competency that I think sets us apart. On the partner side, there's a huge opportunity to work and harness the ecosystem, whether that's distributing Upwork's products in other ecosystems, or it's partnering, like we just mentioned, with MSPs, VMSs in the enterprise ecosystem to kind of launch these new offerings. And on the acquisition side, we've talked about, Lifted in the two enterprise deals, but actually in the last year and a half, we've also done two other deals. And that's bringing in two companies, Headroom and Objective, both AI talent-oriented deals. The second one, which we just closed the integration on, actually underpins kind of the advancement of our core search recommendation and matching engine within the marketplace. And we're already starting to see that come forward. So long story short, like what excites me, I think there's a lot of different levers within both my role and within the company of how we can kind of capture these shifts that are happening.
And I mean, from what you're saying, so you're not only just ensuring that the AI that is being used, is leading to creativity, opportunity, connection, but also efficient. So what is your role in this? Like, are you building partnerships? Tell me a little bit about your role in making sure that, all of this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, so the role is it's really quite end to end, and it starts with the strategy. It starts with what themes are we seeing? Where is the world heading more broadly? Where is our industry heading? Where is Upwork positioned within that, and where do we think we can, frankly, just help better solve what our clients and freelancers and talent are looking for? And so by starting with the strategy, then you can have purpose-built partnerships to enable that, or
Right,
purpose-built acquisitions to facilitate that.
right.
One of the things I always kind of joke about internally, or just when I'm talking to others, asking about corporate development or the M&A side, is the best thing you can do is have strategy drive your M&A or strategy drive your partnerships. If it's the other way around and partnerships or M&A are driving your strategy, you've probably lost the plot a little bit, and it's not going to be a successful outcome.
Right. Fair. There's a lot of talk about AI and trust. Yeah, okay, great. Efficiency, creative, collaborative, but is it really? Is there, do you have anything that you're working on at Upwork to kind of resolve this trust issue, or is it just hype still?
No, I think it's critical. I think, human and AI collaboration is kind of where the world is headed. I think that does become the norm over time. And a reason why I think that collaboration is important is because there's an element of trust that only humans to humans can build and generate. We've done some initial research on this in terms of our platform and our
Right.
research team, and we're seeing that clients that are hiring for roles that are human and AI enabled, they're 2x more likely to trust those than versus AI only solutions. And so the data is starting to show that. The real question is, how do you harness it? And I think,
Right.
we're a marketplace in the center of connecting clients on one side and talent on the other, and facilitating that collaboration and that trust, incorporating AI is frankly, what gets me excited and coming out of bed each day to come work at Upwork.
That's great. So let's talk about what you're seeing in terms of the current state of work with remote and freelance talent. What are you seeing with them? What are the big shifts also that are coming in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a little bit hard to think 5 to 10 years because I think we're also sitting right now in one of the like most transformative times in the kind of
True.
in work.
Right.
I do think obviously that plays out over the next 5 to 10 years, but obviously this accelerating technological change, as you mentioned, the rise of remote work, freelance talent. I think those are no longer edge cases. I think those will become even more foundational. It kind of goes back to this broader is staffing and contingent workforce. Where is it headed? Well, I actually think it's going to get amplified so that you do have that flexibility to move up and down and to meet demand. And so I think that's critical. One of the things that excites me specifically about Upwork is that, for the last 20 years, and I've only been here for a year, but clearly there's a history behind the company. I think we've guided businesses and professionals through kind of these tectonic shifts that are happening
Mm-hmm.
in work. Whether it's remote talent, cloud-based collaboration, the rise of mobile and social, kind of that revolution.
It's true.
That has been a core competency for Upwork. And I think our,
Okay.
our, our brand purpose or our core goal is kind of helping create opportunities in every era of work. And I think the AI one is no different. And so
Mm-hmm.
getting back to your original question of, what happens in the next 5 to 10 years, I think, two or three predictions. I think the first is, I think you'll see more hiring for outcome-based roles and delivery versus just full-time hiring and versus role-based hiring. And I think this will become, both amplified with AI, but companies really wanting to figure out how do I drive impact and meet outcomes. And frankly, companies like Upwork and some of that full stack contingent offering, how can we help them with that? So they may not want a role-based hire. They may want us to, solve an engineering or design solution for them. And they come to us and say, what's the best way to achieve this outcome? Do you want to help me bring in freelancers? Is it staff augmentation? Is this a fully managed outsourced solution? So I think that will become more prevalent over time. Look, you're seeing that already with things like Klarna in the fintech space, which obviously has made a lot of noise in terms of how they've brought in AI and partnered with OpenAI to kind of
Mm-hmm.
reinvent some of their systems. They've had to flex up and down in terms of the contingent staffing they've needed. I think that will become more prevalent. So that's kind of bucket one. I think we've talked about it. I do think human plus AI collaboration will be the norm. Obviously there's augmentation, there's acceleration benefits. You can unlock new potential, but I don't think you'll ever be able to fully kind of escape or replace the human judgment and the creativity that humans bring. And so I think that will continue to manifest and become more prevalent. And then the last one, I would say, rather than kind of geographical or hierarchical work, I think you'll start to see networks that are more defined by trust and skills. And I think the skills that are evolving is a fascinating piece as AI comes more prevalent.
Okay. Thank you. What's one piece of advice you would give to leaders and, people in the workforce solutions ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let me think. I think, one of the early mentors I had, really shared the importance of being able to think like a strategist and then act and execute like an operator. And the analogy that she used was knowing when to have and use a telescope versus a microscope. And so a telescope being, hey, when do you take a step back? Look at the 10,000, 100,000 foot view. What are the major shifts happening? How are we looking at, in this particular instance, the rise of some of these trends, remote-based work, freelancing, more trust-based skills and networks, like what's happening overall. And then on the flip side, knowing when to really zoom in with a microscope. And when it comes down to execution, when it comes down to precision, knowing when to kind of get into the weeds and execute on it. And so I think as we're seeing this rapid shift and change in pace with technology and with AI in the workforce space, I think knowing how to oscillate and shift and really like forcing yourself to zoom back out if you're really looking in the weeds or vice versa is going to be super important so that you don't have the big shifts passing you by, but then you don't also spend a lot of time pontificating and not actually executing and achieving, what you set out to do in the first place.
Yeah, it's hard. It's
Very hard, very
it's
hard. It's not
a
easy.
tough game.
I'm still trying to figure it out after 20
Oh,
plus
yeah,
years, but
yeah, yeah. It's a tough
it
game.
needs honing. It needs
Yeah,
honing for
eh,
sure.
for sure, for sure. What's one thing when you think about the future of work that AI cannot replace for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's judgment and creativity. I think again, to draw a parallel to probably the financial services or commerce space where I spent a lot of time in my career. There was a rise of a lot of platforms, Shopify, other things that
Yeah,
made it a lot easier to start a website, build payments, get things up and off the ground. But ultimately, what you started seeing is everyone had a similar website. So they wanted more creativity. They wanted to be able to differentiate so that when you were going to this site or that site, it didn't all look the same. So as much automation and as much, potential there is around the technology side, you still have that human creativity and you still
sure.
need that like core underpinning of judgment and that trust. And so, I don't think that'll get replaced by AI. I'm super excited about kind of the future of how we collaborate and work together, and frankly, empowering people like you and I to achieve things we couldn't have done before. But
Sure.
I don't think it's going to be able to replace, this conversation that we're having right now, for instance.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for your time. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.